Right now, somewhere in your kitchen, there's a knife. You don't think about it, you just use it. But over 5,000 years ago, that same task, cutting, chopping, killing, could only be done with rock, wood, or bone. Then one day, someone made a mistake. And that mistake changed the entire trajectory of human civilization. This isn't a story about clever engineers solving a problem on purpose. It's a story about an accident so strange that historians are still arguing about how it actually happened. What if the most important material in ancient history was never invented, only found? Somewhere between a campfire and a pile of colored rocks, humans stumbled into the first man-made metal on Earth. And once they had it, nothing was ever soft again. For nearly 3 million years, human tools didn't change much. Sharpen a rock, attach it to a stick, repeat. Stone tools could cut, scrape, pierce, and kill. But stone has a problem. It's rigid. Break it wrong, and what happens? It's gone. Once a stone axe cracks, that axe is dead forever. And that single limitation, stone can't be melted down and made again, is exactly what made bronze feel like magic when it finally arrived. So let's go back to the beginning, not of bronze, of copper. Around 7,000 years before the Common Era, people in the Middle East started noticing strange green and blue rocks near the surface of the ground. Were these just rocks? Not exactly. Archaeologist James Mooley, who spent decades studying early metallurgy, argued these colorful rocks, malachite and azurite, were first valued for something else entirely. Not tools, pigment. Early humans crushed them into powder for paint and eye makeup. So how do you go from makeup to metal? The answer is fire. Specifically, campfires that got a little too hot. Picture a cooking fire, ringed with stones. Except sometimes people use these blue-green rocks instead, because they were sitting right there. Why would anyone think twice about it? But something happens to those rocks above 700 degrees Celsius that nobody could have predicted. The copper trapped inside starts to separate. It melts. And if the conditions are right, a small bead of pure, shining copper metal forms at the base of the fire. Can you imagine finding that? You build a fire to cook dinner. The next morning, sitting in the ash, is a tiny globe of metal that didn't exist the day before. For a long time, historians assumed this discovery happened once and spread outward, but newer evidence complicates that. What if it didn't happen just once? Archaeologist Thomas Levy, working in the Timna Valley in modern Israel, found smelting evidence that pushed timelines earlier than expected, suggesting this accident may have happened independently in multiple regions around the same era. Different people, different continents sometimes. Same accidental discovery. This wasn't one genius. It was fire, ordinary rocks, and repetition, happening again and again until enough people had seen it to start doing it on purpose. That process is called smelting. And once it became intentional, copper stopped being a curiosity and became a technology. But copper, on its own, had a serious weakness, and solving that weakness is what actually created the Bronze Age. Pure copper is soft, too soft. Hammer it into a blade and it looks impressive, until you use it. It bends. It dulls almost instantly. Would you trust a sword that curls like a spoon after one swing? For centuries, copper tools were more prestige than practicality. Then, around 3,500 years before the Common Era, smiths in the Near East, modern-day Iran and Iraq, began mixing copper with a second ingredient, tin. Nobody knows exactly who discovered this first or why they tried it, but the leading theory is stranger than the copper accident itself. Bronze may have been born from a mistake nobody meant to make. Some early copper ores were naturally contaminated with arsenic, and smiths noticed dirty copper behaved differently when melted. It was harder, stronger. So the first bronze may not have been invented at all. It may have been discovered by people trying to purify copper and getting it wrong in exactly the right way. Eventually, smiths realized tin worked even better than arsenic and wasn't toxic to breathe in during smelting, a problem that likely killed early arsenic bronze workers without them ever knowing why. What ratio finally cracked the code? Roughly 9 parts copper to 1 part tin. Melt them together and you get something new. Not copper, not tin, bronze. It was harder. It held a sharp edge far longer. It could be cast into complex shapes using molds. And critically, unlike stone, if a bronze tool broke, you melted it down and made something new. Think about how radical that is. For millions of years, every broken tool was gone forever. Bronze was the first material in human history that could die and come back as something else. But here's the twist almost nobody expects. Tin is rare. Astonishingly rare. And that rarity may have quietly reshaped the ancient world. Usable tin deposits were scattered. Some of the closest sources to the Near East were in modern Afghanistan, later as far as Britain. So what do you do when the one ingredient you need most is thousands of kilometers away? Ancient civilizations built trade networks across entire continents just to keep bronze production running. Historian Andrew Sherratt argued that demand for tin may have helped invent long-distance trade as an organized system in the first place. Did bronze also decide how far human societies had to reach just to survive? Kingdoms that controlled tin routes gained enormous power. Kingdoms cut off from those routes fell behind almost overnight. What happens to an empire when its supply line simply disappears? Some historians connect the collapse of several Bronze Age civilizations around 1200 years before the Common Era partly to disruptions in these fragile tin supply chains. A metal born from a cooking fire accident ended up deciding which civilizations rose and which one collapsed. Once bronze spread, farming tools grew stronger, harvests grew larger, and surpluses meant some people no longer needed to farm at all. And what do you do with people freed from the fields? They became soldiers, priests, record keepers, rulers. Some historians argue bronze helped build the first organized states. Weapons changed too. Armies equipped with bronze had a decisive advantage over those without it, an advantage written permanently into history as conquest. And yet bronze was always fragile in one specific way. It depended entirely on that stretched supply line of tin. Could the very thing that made bronze civilizations powerful also make them breakable? It could, and eventually it did. Then another accident, smelting iron, using techniques that needed even higher, more controlled heat, began replacing bronze almost everywhere. Iron didn't need imported tin. It was more common, more local, cheaper to produce. So did bronze fail? Not exactly. The Bronze Age ended not because bronze failed, but because something more accessible came along. Notice the pattern. Copper was an accident. Bronze may have been an accident. Even the shift to iron followed the same blueprint. Humans stumbling into transformation, then spending centuries turning the accident into a system. Is that really how progress works? Not genius, but repetition? We like to imagine invention as a moment of brilliance, but bronze wasn't invented that way. It was found in ash, in contaminated copper, in rocks that were only ever meant to be face paint. So the next time you pick up a metal object, a knife, a key, a coin, remember its entire lineage traces back to someone who built a fire in the wrong place, with the wrong rocks, and never knew they'd just detonated the future. Right now, there's a knife in your kitchen. You still don't think about it. But now you know it exists because a stranger, thousands of years ago, made a mistake they never got to see the ending of. And that mistake is only half the story, because bronze didn't stay an accident forever. At some point, humans stopped stumbling into metal and started hunting for it on purpose. That shift from luck to intention is what eventually gave us iron, and it's a stranger story than bronze ever was. If this made you look at the objects around you differently, that's exactly what this channel is built for. So stick around, because the next mistake humanity made was even bigger.